Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and my next guest is the president of the Community Development Division of Enterprise Community Development. Please welcome Brian McLaughlin. Welcome to the podcast.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for giving me a mic.
Yeah, I've seen a few interviews, and I've been doing. I feel like I'm in one of those movies from the 70s where you have like the strings and the different bullet points. I was like, who's this Brian guy? Let me just blend everything together. And but since I've been doing that, I want to invite you to give the listeners the vital stats. What's your background? Describe how you got started, maybe that first job and the field that you're currently in.
Yeah, no, thanks for the chance. So look, I mean, at its most basic level, right? I'm a husband going on 18 years. I'm a dad going on 16 years. I won't claim Baltimore the way a lot of folks do who talk about their schools. I was born at Hopkins. That's my claim to fame. But I didn't really grow up in Baltimore. I ended up growing up more in Columbia, Maryland, and then later we moved west. I finished my rearing in Arizona. But I got out of Arizona as soon as I could. And so I left high school, came back East Coast. So I was at Duke for undergrad. I did my master's degree in city planning at MIT, and then I did a master's in economics at American University. Been on the East Coast now ever since, 20, 25 years, focused really in this one space of housing, questions of housing finance. And that's, I'm lucky. I've had one career. It's my career, housing and housing finance.
If we can only all be so lucky. It's like, oh yeah, never lost. I know exactly where I was going with this. I dig it. I love to hear it. So think back early into your career. Was there any piece of advice or experience that you look back on had a profound impact on why you work in the affordable housing market?
Yeah, there were a couple moments in life where I think I got the bug. I can't say it was like the big bright light went off and I knew forever thereafter my life was one direction only. But I did spend part of my summer in high school helping to build really, homes on an Indian reservation in California. It was this project. We went out there for a week and we, worked all day, and then we swam in the river that they all swam in. And it was just, kind of lived with them, but helped really build housing in a situation where folks really were without. And to see what you can do with your hands, to see how you can transform lives through your hands and through this physical structure of a house that ultimately gets stitched together into a neighborhood, to see what that can do to people was, to me, a really moving moment in an early point in my life. And I think I realized that if part of my trajectory in life was about making change, you could really do that through housing and through communities. And I caught the bug, and I've stayed with it.
So let's talk about like where you're at, because there's some interesting details about it. I believe I read a piece about it's very BIPOC focused, Black led, things of that nature. So could you give us some details about like where you're at? Yeah.
Happy to. So, a little bit after Thanksgiving, we launched what was really our effort to say, we can really do a lot in this industry to bring a different kind of product and a different kind of partner to the table. If we opened our doors at Enterprise to the very simple idea of joint ventures, the very simple idea that, yeah, we know what we're doing. We've been at it 30 plus years, but there's a whole team of folks out there who maybe haven't had the luxury and the benefit of doing this for 30 years. So what if instead of us really focusing squarely on doing more projects by ourselves, we said, let's partner, let's joint venture, let's find those who maybe bring something to the table that we don't have. Maybe they bring an awareness of something in that community that we don't know. Maybe they bring an ownership. Maybe they bring a partnership. Maybe they bring a different experience to the table that translates into a different kind of project than what we would have come up with on our own. And then what if we also made sure that was an effort to be more inclusive in this industry and bring people of color, bring nonprofits, and bring faith-based organizations to the table?
Sure.
So we patched all that together under a program that we spent about a year working on called the Let's Build Accelerator. And that is the program I talked about. We launched right after Thanksgiving, and we're now a few months into it, and I've been overwhelmed by the number of folks who've raised their hand and said, I'd love a chance to talk more about it.
Yeah. So that's great, and being here and seeing, I guess, the direction where things are going. I think things are going in terms of the makeup of like a city like Baltimore, which has the demographics of being very skewed to people of color, black folks, what have you, and having that kind of connection to other entities that are within the city, nonprofit that are here to help ultimately, faith-based institutions that are generally helping out in a very big and impactful way. Now, oftentimes it's like you only really notice it when it's gone. It's like, oh, wow, that church is no longer here. Oh, what are we going to do? And seeing that entities are coming together with kind of a goal of like, how does this look better? How do we improve this? What is the better version of what this setup looks like from a housing standpoint, from a community standpoint?
No, exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, I think that a lot of, there has to be a certain amount of humility there, right? Because you're at some level you're saying maybe we don't have all the answers, even though we're the big player in the market. We really are the sixth largest nonprofit provider in the country, right. And the only one headquartered in Baltimore, and then the largest in Maryland by twofold, and the second largest in DC. And you put all that together, and there's a lot of reason to think we don't need to open our doors. We know what we're doing. But I think to your point, if you really get down to the more basic level of what is it you're trying to do, then you come to the very simple realization that really none of us is as smart as all of us. Mm-hmm. So let's get more people together and be smarter in how we approach this industry.
So Enterprise Community Development has a presence across Southern PA, Maryland, DC, Virginia. What's unique about the different general geographical areas that you're working in, and how do you overcome any like reluctance from communities? Because I think there's a lot of times that people will just think, oh, change, I don't want that. Or who are these people? I don't want that. So tell me more about that. What makes us a little bit different is that we are the scale of a national player, but we don't work nationally. We just work in this region, like you said, right. those few states. So when you take what a lot of other companies do with, we have a little over 500 employees. You take 500 employees and the folks that are bigger than us sort of spread that across 15, 16, 17 states. When you do that just in this one region, what you do is you really get, I think, a different kind of relationship to neighborhoods and to people. You're right, though. Not everybody's, welcoming affordable housing into their neighborhoods. And so we spend years in this region talking about how do we expand opportunities into the counties, into Baltimore County. 4 years to develop a project, maybe in Baltimore County. 4 years to do a project in Fairfax County. But I think what makes us different is that, again, because we have this scale, we have this sticking power, right? We have this ability to hang with something a little longer than our peers might, because we've got the book, we got the $1.3 billion in value of our portfolio, and we know what's important and we know what's right. So we're going to stick with it, and we're going to stick with it until we see it through. Yeah, I think when, like in the community I'm in, I look at different entities that'll come in, and I'm using in part having this platform and having some of these conversations with folks. It's like, stuff, and it's like, let me check this, see how far this goes down. And being a homeowner, you want to know really what are the plans, because you've made this investment here. And I like the thing that you touched on, like we're in the community. We have that staying power. We want to be around. This is a long haul, long game sort of thing. Whereas I've seen in my community, it'll be entities that come in and want a certain buy-in. They want a certain influence. And then if they felt like they haven't gotten it or they've run into any impediments, all right, I'm going to see you guys next time. And I like that you touched on, it's like we have this scale, but we're focused in these areas that it feels like, oh, you're part of this. You're part of this community or what have you. And that builds goodwill.
Yeah, and I like to think it does. And we're working. When administrations change, you sometimes have to start over. You have to tell your story again. You have to hope that goodwill continues. I think our name means a lot. Look, we grew out of Jim Rouse, right? Jim Rouse created Columbia, literally from scratch. And he created the Inner Harbor, among other places. And so those are our roots. I mean, the company I lead is Jim Rouse's development company, and it's an honor to do that. And so there's a lot of goodwill that came from our roots and our history, and we're trying to carry it forward.
Love to hear that. Love to hear that. So let me see what this next question is, because I had something that was there, but I feel like it got answered already. So now I'm like, because you're ahead of the curve. You're overachiever, Brian. So how do you see, like, maybe the landscape of what you're doing currently maybe changing over the next, like, several years or what have you, and ultimately what do you believe moves the community forward? And maybe you did touch on this a bit, but if we can hammer that home. But yeah, kind of as I was touching on a little bit earlier, like Baltimore, where I'm based at, we see changes like in the East Baltimore footprint. There is housing of all different scale, like kind of coming up, and the community is changing even over the last like 5 years. And I was one of those people that moved back into the community after, living here like 20 years ago, moving back. And it's like, there's been more change in the last 5 years than the previous. So where do you see things kind of moving? Like, where do you see things going from your vantage point?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. I think you just hit on one, is that neighborhoods that were in need are even in greater need now. Right, the last 2 years, I think, have accelerated some negative trends, but they've also put a bright light on some things that were there before. Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the things that's changing is we've got to just be more honest about the fact that beyond housing, folks need a lot more. We need to come in and we need to solve some housing issues, but we have to solve other human issues through housing as well, through community. And so I think the way we approach development and how we think about what development is meant to do has to evolve. That's one change. I think one of the other realizations is that we're running out of land to do this work. And there's a lot of land in the suburbs. There's a lot of lands in neighborhoods that have not traditionally viewed themselves as needing to be open and inclusive to affordable housing, for lots of reasons. But so I think one of the things ahead of us is how to really have human conversations about people and about their life potential, and how do we open doors in places that have historically not been open in order to realize that potential, through housing, through neighborhoods, through letting folks into schools and places where they haven't been allowed in the past. And I think that's a huge space we're going to have to spend time on going forward. And then finally, I think, like I was saying, we've got to be more thoughtful about the fact that the way we get there is got to be a little different. It can't be the same folks doing the same things. We've got to have different approaches, and that sometimes means different partners and different tools in the toolbox in order to get them done.
Yeah, I agree with that. And thank you for sharing that. So partnership, collaboration, and things of that nature, I think, are really a part of it, and of a lot of the work that you're doing. It helps out a lot of the work that you're doing. And my understanding is that where your role is at, it's a partnership between three different divisions or what have you. You have, the national nonprofit side of things. You have the racial equity side of things, and in building resilience through like upward mobility. So I want to ask this question about networking, because I think it's interesting. Like, everyone has a different approach, right? So what is your philosophy on networking and collaboration in that way? And are you good at working in a room? Are you you prefer using like LinkedIn? Tell me about that from your vantage point, because I'm stealing from you, just so you know. But I want to know, what is your philosophy in that area?
I struggle with it because I think the technology, like you said, LinkedIn and other tools, have made it easier than ever to connect with people, to think about who's in your network. But I think the result is a flood. It's a flood of folks, and I think networks don't mean what they used to mean. Facebook changed what it means to be a quote friend.
Right.
All those folks aren't friends. Just like all those folks in LinkedIn aren't really part of my network. They are virtually. I think networking has to have a human connection in order to matter. And I think that my philosophy on it is, it's the difference maker. Mm-hmm. When we look at some of the obstacles to why some of our residents in Baltimore City, for example, don't move forward the way some folks in the county do, It's not about God-given gifts. It's not about opportunities always that were afforded to them through their parents and other things. At the end of the day, it comes down, in some cases, to a really important variable, which is your social network. I do a quiz with folks all the time. Raise your hand if at some point in your life, one of the jobs you got, an internship, a job, whatever, was the result of someone you knew. And invariably, 3 out of 4 people raise their hand and say, yeah, somewhere I got along the way was because somebody I knew about the job, knew about the hiring manager or something like that, right? So if you think about that and you ask folks, kind of who's in your network and who has the ability to influence you in your trajectory, we find a lot of the folks in the city and others are more isolated, more cut out from networks that have power than ever before. I mean, I think if anything, COVID pushed us into a corner, but even before COVID, our country was moving into much more bubbleization. People are being forced into small bubbles, and that bubble is your world. And it's your news feed, it's your music, it's your friends, it's your tweets. Everything you get is now your own little bubble. And I think some folks don't always acknowledge that can be fun and reaffirming of who you want to be. But if that bubble doesn't include connections that are going to get you where you want to be in life, you're really cut out. You're cut out more now than I think you and I were coming up. I mean, it's a very scary world. So that social network, I think, really has to be something we think about more. And how do I, and when I think about, the fact that I get requests every day, literally on LinkedIn, and I try to honor them, but how do I really take the time to help someone who really needs that extra connection to a real network that's going to help them later?
Yeah. And I agree with that. I find that in spending more time on LinkedIn, for example, it's a different culture there where connecting, really, I'm bad at it as well, networking and collaboration. And I've been answering a lot of questions recently. Oh, how are you so charismatic? You're just extrovert. I was like, no, I am not. And having to in doing this podcast and going through this journey and connecting dots and connecting people, you have to find alternative ways to do it. And sometimes I'll find that I might connect with someone on LinkedIn that I've already connected with on Instagram, and the responses are very different on LinkedIn. It's like people are more inclined to have a conversation, and there's less kind of barriers. Because I think that's the other thing that's sitting there in terms of that kind of siloed, bubbled communication that, oh, you like this? You're probably like this. Let's just start adding this into your feed. And I find more substantive stuff comes out of the LinkedIn conversations because that's the climate of people that are using it.
Yeah.
And I've had more conversations about funding, more conversations about how do you extend the reach of your message, and doing this podcast with not only artists but people really contributing to the culture of the city and what it will look like. And I think that's ultimately why we're having this conversation of what are these places gonna look like, and who are the people contributing to what these places are gonna look like. Because I think those changes really impact those other areas, such as culture, such as art. And if you have more people in the city, you have more people aware of what's going on in the city, you have more of that exchange of people coming from the county, tourism, things of that nature, all of these different things. So having less abandons and having more people living in properties and a stronger sense of community here, it just makes it better. I think
you're right. I think even to your point, if you really wanted to get people to think differently, one approach is, you talked about, folks get, more suggestions on things they like because of something they already like. If we could just create an algorithm that said, once a week, I'm going to send you the opposite, right? I know what you like. Instead of sending you more of what you like, I'm going to send you the 180 opposite. Yeah. Just so you can hear it and consider it. I think if we did that, I think we might find every now and then there might be an adoption, believe it or not. There might be an adoption of that. Oh, I didn't realize that that's something on the other side that I actually can relate to. And I think if we did more of that, and if the folks who, aren't embracing the conversation you just had about how do we make Baltimore better, that don't feel like that's their conversation, if they got forced to just ask or be brought into a small part of that discussion once a month, once a week,
Yeah.
they might say, you know what, I do find some similarities in these questions. Let me figure out how to be a part of a different conversation once in a while.
I think it could be titled "Things to Consider." You know, like, and instead of things you might like, things to consider. You might.
There you go.
So I got a couple more questions before I get into these rapid fire ones, which, like I said, before we got started, everyone is afraid of. Everyone's like, look, man, what did he find? Did he find that weird picture? Did he find a picture when I was in college and I had this weird mohawk? Like, what were we doing? So from your spot, when you hear president, I immediately think of like a leader, someone that's like responsible for a lot and has a lot of, attention around what they do. So what would you say one of the more important lessons that you've learned as a leader?
I got to say, one of the things that really struck me as I look back was I never wanted to be a leader for leader's sake. I never said I want to be at the head of the table, so let me go sit there. I found that being a leader, in the lesson that I learned, was just try to be valuable, try to be helpful, try to be someone who listens and gives a comment that moves the conversation forward. And I think what I found is that the more I did that, the more I got pushed to the front to say more and to listen more. And the two go together. You got to listen before you speak. A lot of leaders think they speak in first and then listen in second. It's never that way. It's listen and then say. And I think leadership is something that, if you're lucky enough, you earn it. You earn it because you listened and you helped move things forward.
Yeah, some of the folks that I've listened to, because I'm speaking to more executive directors, more founders and things of that nature, and especially folks that come in and they're taking on something that's existing. I hear more and more people are doing I'm starting off by doing a listening tour. I need to get a climate of what's happening instead of coming in John Wayne style and it's like, I'm switching everything. It's like, sure.
Never. Yeah, leading from arrogance never lasts, never works long term. Yeah, I've found that's another lesson.
So this is the last real question I have, and I call it real because it's like now I'm just going to get weird after this. Again, stealing, right? Theft. Can you recommend a book that's had an influence on your career, and how has it influenced you?
There's a lot of books I think that moved me over my life. I remember even as a child just reading the Dr. Seuss's The Lorax. I'm the Lorax. I speak for the trees. For the trees have no tongue. Just the whole notion that there is a part of our society that doesn't have a voice.
Sure.
But doesn't, because they don't have a voice doesn't mean they don't matter. I mean, I think some of those books I discovered as a child, and I kept going. I did. Du Bois's, Souls of Black Folks, and really understood at a different level that same conversation of the Lorax, that there's a whole nother group that doesn't have someone speaking for them, and policy and practice just rolls over them. So I think any book in that genre of just opening your eyes to realities around those who you typically don't get to hear from or read from or speak to are a great genre of books.
That's great. It's great. I've always talked about it. I've been on this Robert Greene deep dive on how do you understand people differently? How do you understand things? Because you learn different things that it's kind of it makes sense. It was something about the spoken word versus the written word and how much older it is and how it's embedded in your DNA. And you're just we've been speaking a lot longer than we've been writing. So keep that in mind. And especially applying to what I do here. It's I'm not writing. I'm just doing a lot of this. So how do you better relate to people using a tool that has been around, using a method that's been around for a lot longer? I find that to be informative and helpful in what I'm doing, and connecting to reading something and learning something that it's just, okay, this informs why I'm doing what I'm doing. And this gives me an extra layer. And even this idea, this through line that I've been kind of playing with of what am I really doing and the work that I'm doing, whether it be podcasts, whether it be in cultural curating, it's trying to uncover things that people either are ill-informed about or just simply don't know about. And, kind of tying these things together. It's just like, oh, that's why I'm doing it. That's my vocation. That's my calling. And that's what really drives me and gets me up and keeps me energized and motivated.
Well, no, I'm so supportive that you do this. I do think it does give another channel for people to access these ideas, these thoughts that for whatever reason don't want to pick up the book, right? Yeah. But want to latch onto a different kind of conversation.
Well, thank you. So now all of the goodwill that I've established in this conversation is all going out of the window. So I got a couple of questions for you, some rapid fire questions for you. And you know how rapid fire questions work, Brian. Come on. So I'm going to start off with this first one. In 3 words or less, describe what it takes to be successful.
Discipline. Hard work is really, 2 words. So discipline and hard work.
I agree. Now it's going to get progressively weirder. What is one of your nicknames? Told you it's going to get progressively weirder.
Workaholic.
I like it. A Blue Devil or Tim the Beaver?
Oh, come on, man. I'm a Duke mid-90s, Christian Laettner, Grant Hill, Bobby Hurley era. We got to go Blue Devils. Come on. I know that's dangerous. I know Duke came back 10 points, in under a minute. It hurts. It never goes away. But I gotta own the Blues.
Okay. I was wondering how that one was going to go over. I was like,
sorry.
Am I keeping it in? Am I taking it out? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the last one I have for you. And again, this is so do you watch, like when there's a new show that's coming out, are you a 1 episode at a time kind of guy? Or are you, let's binge the whole season, let's just wait until everything is out and I'm just going to run through it. I'm just going to eat the whole season.
Worse on this. I never have the time to binge, and it's a real point of problem in my marriage because we do them 1 at a time, and it usually takes a couple months to get through. My wife left me on season 1 of Ozark. I never got to 2 or 3. We kept Insecure going because that was just once a week. That was easy enough, but nothing else. I've never binged. I wish I could. That would be a great way to spend a day, right?
Yeah, I try to set it up that if I like to travel via train, so if I'm like going to DC or something, I was like, all right, so this is 45 minutes. I can get 2 episodes in, going down, 2 episodes coming back. All right, suddenly I'm caught up now. I try to stack time in that way. But yeah, my girlfriend's kid yelled at us. He's an anime guy, and he started watching, I think, like Squid Game or something. He's like, come on, guys, I haven't watched real people on TV in like 3 years. Y'all behind, so I got to catch up.
Yeah, my son's the same way. And now they just digest this stuff so fast. I think their brains work faster than ours. And they can multitask. They can watch a show, do the dishes, and listen to music at the same time. It's just, it's remarkable what these kids are going to accomplish.
These like new brains. I don't know what to say. It's like the new iPhone. It's like, oh, there's an update. Oh, really? Wow.
Right. We're going to be obsolete soon enough. I'm realizing that. So
yeah. So 1, thank you for being on this podcast, and 2, I want to invite you to pretty much plug anything. And is there anything that you wanted to key in on these last few minutes that you felt that we didn't really get to in this conversation?
Well, look, I mean, I appreciate kind of your point about just trying to have a conversation about things that don't always seem sexy and cool. Like how do we make Baltimore a little bit more brighter? So I just appreciate that. I appreciate you looking for the beauty, the art, in all of this that's around us. And so I would just say Enterprise is here. We're right next to Hollins Market, a couple blocks over. That's our headquarters. We are part, I hope, of the art that is Baltimore. I hope we're painting a nice color and adding a nice spark in life to the city. One project, one community, one supported life at a time. So if you ever want to learn more about us, enterprisecommunitydevelopment.org, enterprisecommunitydevelopment.org will get you to our website. And we're always looking for more folks who are wanting to be part of our journey.
So there you have it, folks. I want to thank Brian McLaughlin again for coming onto the podcast from Enterprise Community Development. And I am Rob Lee, saying there's community development in and around Baltimore. You just got to look for it.